Hey, everybody. Welcome to Improv FAQ at Length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have nothing to do with improv. Or no.
Nothing to do. Well, I mean, you're not wrong sometimes.
Wow. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions surrounding them. Where did that come from? I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
This is a series of conversations that have nothing to do with improv.
You had nothing to do.
Oh man, the human brain. I think so. What a perfect little flub there too, because
Right.
our topic of conversation to start this episode out is going to be meta play. And as we get started with the conversation, feel free to chime in with any comments you might have or questions, and we'll do our best to incorporate those into the conversation.
Just a reminder: if you have a question that's not related to the topic we're talking about, that's cool. This is like we say, this is a conversation at the bar. It doesn't have to stay on track.
No, nor is it going to. So yeah, really, any questions about things in the improv world are fair game, and we'll switch gears to those, focusing on those questions. Once we made our way through the main topic, which is meta play. So there's a lot under the umbrella of meta play. In general, it's the idea of playing with the overhead real experience of what's going on in the show, the meta world, which is the real world. It's commenting as yourself as a player, breaking the fourth wall, breaking character, tipping your hat to things that are happening in the reality of the scene while that aren't necessarily happening in the fiction of the scene. And so the reason that I think that opening flub is so perfect is because it's like those kind of just weird unconscious experiences that I think really make me the most fascinated about improv in general. And I don't think that there's a way to really capitalize on them without going meta, which some people aren't fans of. But I also think that they shouldn't be glossed over. Like when you're like,
Absolutely.
So you got to do something with them, and sometimes you can pull it off in the world of the characters and make use of it, but other times it's funny. It's the funniest and the most authentic to go to the meta world and just take a moment to be like, what just happened?
Right. I mean, we call it play. Like, who are you playing with tonight? When do you get to play next? So the entertainment should be playful. So if you can, if you're doing it to be playful, and also you're trying to be entertaining, if you can do those two things and take a step out of the world you're building to step into reality for a second and just comment or embrace that moment, I think that's magic right there. And that's part of the reason people want to come to see improv. Part of improv entertainment is the content. The other part is the process and showing how to create said entertainment. So anytime you can show the strings in the trick and it doesn't ruin the overall act, go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't always go for it, but the special moments, go for it.
Yeah, I think my main argument or position on this topic is that it needs to be legitimized and respected more, because I think people try to. I think a lot of people who are great actors and committed, high integrity improvisers paint meta as a cop out or a negative thing, or just like a cheat or falling short of staying fully committed. And I think that it's just a difference in style that I think just
Absolutely.
deserves to be like, just deserves to be recognized as like, it's, I dislike it, but it's your style, or you know, leaving room for it in
Yeah.
mixed bag improv sets.
Yeah, and I think I can't say with 100% certainty, but I think a lot of it has to do with people breaking the fourth wall when it doesn't necessarily need to happen. And that leaves a bad taste in someone's mouth. If breaking the fourth wall is a spice, to me it's a bouillon cube, and it should only be a little bit at a time because it does a lot when it does work.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
That I've been watching a lot of cooking shows. Thank you, quarantine.
Well, okay, so let's kind of make our way through different types of meta. Let's start with the one that I think is a little trickier actually to define, which actually prompted us to pick this as a topic, which is the idea of commenting. And this is kind of like a thinly veiled meta comment through the character or through your acting, where
Right.
you can kind of see the strings of the puppet, you know. And so it's things like, this is how I think of it, Bob, and then where you're like, you know, the character is like, oh sure, you know, that makes a ton of sense. Or
Yep.
you know, yes, of course, I always keep my bread in the freezer, you know, whatever. Which is not actually uncommon.
No, that's pretty common.
Yeah.
Especially like Ezekiel bread that doesn't have
Yeah,
that's a totally different concept.
bread comes from
Bread.
birth, the bread
You
animal.
want to stop talking about improv and talk about bread because he promised not to stay on the topic of improv. So
Look, what I promise is that we'd be having conversations that have nothing to do with improv.
so the natural progression would be bread, obviously. No, but I agree. Like, it's usually done in sarcasm, and delivered almost in a slight sarcastic, but not like the normal the normal cadence sarcastic line would be delivered. You know, from my experience, it's usually either completely dry, but it's delivered in a way where like you are poking holes in whatever someone just said or whatever concept they're trying to apply to the reality you're creating.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I don't like so much commenting. I think there's a place for it. I think, you know, I don't want to say never do anything on stage because there should be no nevers. Well, there's a couple nevers, but those are extreme.
By and large, it's about making sure
Yeah.
that what you're doing is a choice and not a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're still doing it in a supportive way, because I think that's what I don't like about commenting. When you're commenting on something, you're making fun of some a part of the puzzle that someone other than yourself has applied. I noticed that there's a lot of self commenting, like when you make a mistake and then you're like you call yourself out on it, which I don't like either, and I'm guilty of it. Like, you know, like not that what you did. Well, I guess it was a self commented on after your intro. You made a mistake. You commented on it. You know, but you're not doing an improv scene, so you're not creating reality. So it's different. But
Right.
I notice people do that. Like, oops.
Yeah. I so this one's kind of tricky. I would say that it's a good habit, or sorry, it's a good practice to be in, to commit and not comment as the player from underneath the character.
Absolutely.
Because one, I think that every improviser should go through the process of learning to act well. And if you're still kind of if you're still kind of half pulling your punches, or half in half out, then you are not really exercising good acting skills. a little bit of a different story when on the other side of that, when you're like, I've done the legwork to make sure that I'm able to act and stay committed, and now I choose to deviate from it. But I think a lot of
Yes.
the time when you see this type of commenting, it's from earlier improvisers that maybe haven't gotten over that hump yet.
Yeah, yeah, and some of I think I think some of it too, like when you do the self commenting, is a way to protect yourself, and you show doubt, and the audience is there for you. They want you to succeed. So when they see you kind of beating yourself up, it hurts. It hurts the performance. They feel bad for you, and it takes away from their enjoyment. They want you to be happy and having a great time. They put a lot of uh, trust in you when you get onto that stage. So you have to take care of them by taking care of yourself. If you're confident and it looks good, no need to comment. Like if you make a mistake, cool, roll with it. Make it a choice. Make it a choice to yes and your mistake.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that aside from acting, is that like you need not just acting for like the character, the emotion, and your
Yeah.
end of the scene, but also learning how to build something. So I think that like especially early on, it's like there's so many things in the beginning of a scene that can derail the reality you're trying to build, but you need to learn to build a reality regardless, and sort of push through,
Yeah.
so that you can see what it's like once you have those pieces together. And
Right.
then again, later it becomes a choice to be like, am I going to stop and
Yeah.
acknowledge this or not?
So I got a story. When I was on my launch team, the Vulcan Hipsters, we got a suggestion of, I think it was restroom or toilet specifically. So I started the scene using that suggestion, and I went to go sit down on a chair pretending it was a toilet. And I did that, and then I crossed my leg. And it just cracked me up because no one has ever went number two with their right leg, and I'm like, and I commented on it. And after the show, I thought about it, like, what a great gift I gave myself, on accident. It's so, a total organic gift. I wish I just would have met that guy who that's how he does stuff. Like, drives a car like that, like does stuff in an unusual way, is a way more interesting thing and a way stronger choice than a Bob poop scene, which after I corrected myself, we got to see. I can't remember the scene, but I remember everything before the scene started. So I wish I would have made the stronger choice.
Yeah, and so again, it's like here's the thing. I would argue that it's not like it is a strong choice to go that other route that you're talking about. I don't know if it's always going to be a stronger choice. Because but I think that people do need to condition themselves to be like, oh, okay, this is absurd. What I'm doing is crossing my legs while I'm pooping, and then go, how can I comment on that through the choices that I make in
Right.
the world of the scene? Like you said,
This is true. What else is true? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Driving that way, showing other examples of it,
Yeah.
and doing it on purpose, but making it look like the character is not conscious of what they're doing.
Yeah. Yes. So not even commenting within the actions. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree that that's something that I often wish that like I had gone that route instead and conditioned myself to do more. But I also think it's really funny to stop and be like,
oh yeah, no, it got a laugh, but well, here's the thing. Why I call it a stronger choice, because it did get a laugh, and because everybody know, like, maybe I was one of the first people to notice it, but we all noticed it, and after I commented, everybody, it was solidified. Everybody knows. So yeah, big laugh in the beginning of the scene. I don't think the rest of the scene got an equal laugh or was as entertaining as that moment. So unless it got edited right after that, like, I think I should just, I think the stronger move would have been just to continue doing it until everybody in that room recognized it on their own terms that this is a character who poops cross-legged.
Yeah, and again, so I'm just kind of differentiating between like that's stronger for the scene. That's stronger
Yes.
how to use it for the scene, but you don't always have to do that. You can sometimes use
yeah.
it for the for the reality of the moment. And I think that then if you edit after it and move on to the next thing, that is honest and a valuable choice as well. And it might springboard you into something else. You might be able to call it back later, you know?
Yeah, there's no absolutes.
Yeah. So and I think this is a good moment to bring in Sue's comment.
Hey, Sue. Sue's back. Good.
She says, sometimes it seems like we're doing this type of thing, self-commenting, meta, etc., for ourselves, but it runs the risk of leaving the audience behind. And yeah, absolutely. I agree that is part of the risk. And part of the reason it's a dangerous tool to bring to the scene. But I think you also have the risk of doing the opposite, that if you don't acknowledge in some way the things that everybody in the room notices, like the crossing legs, that because you're like, I have to keep the integrity of the scene. You know, it's very possible we named the kind of these two main choices of like you call it out and play with it as a real person inside the scene as it's happening, or you branch out and make use of it in some tunnel path for the scene. But you could also just be like, I'm going to ignore it. And if you do, then everybody in the room sees this, that might see this weird thing that you're doing and kind of light up and be like, why is he crossing his leg? And if I notice it too, but don't call it out, then you might end up leaving behind what everyone in the room is experiencing in that moment, but the audience doesn't have a voice for. And so I think meta is a way to actually make a stronger connection with the audience.
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
Yeah, because when we all get it at the same time, or is that thing we all know it, but only one who could really verbally comment it to the whole room is the person on stage, unless you have a really rude audience member.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
It just gets up. That guy's pooping with his legs crossed.
Totally. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I am. That's the scene.
Yeah, but so that being said, though, again, what my position is that we have two valid ways of addressing it. The more often than not, the biggest letdown is to never address it. Maybe you don't address it for now and address it later, but if you never address these little things that happen, either by playing with them in the scene or commenting on them as a player, then I think there's a disconnect between the authentic experience of what's happening in the show. And that being said, you know, to Sue's point, it is risky. It can become a crutch. It can shake the audience out of their investment in your show. And if you do it too often, like you said, nothing but bouillon cubes.
Yep. Just dropping bouillon.
Yeah. But yeah. So another thing is too that like here's an interesting kind of like add on to this idea of commenting, because when I took a clown workshop, the way that the instructor talked about commenting was also about like kind of schmacting or like melodramatic acting, where it's like to do this and put your fists in front of your eyes and kind of like wah, wah, is to comment on the experience of being sad, or to throw up your hand and be like, you know, those overdoing it acting moves are comments on the experience of whatever you're trying to convey. They are not actually experiencing the thing. And so for clown, it's a little bit different because it's more about like magnifying real experiences, but I think that carries over to acting too. Is that like sometimes when people are putting on characters or emotions, they're kind of overdoing it and not trying to not driving themselves to a more real subtle experience, and instead they're kind of like protecting themselves from those more real emotions by gesturing and over expressing in this like hollow way.
I agree. You know, what makes me think of when we were talking to, when we were talking to Jill Bernard, and I can't think of the other performer's name, from Texas.
Shannon Scott.
Yes. She made a really good point. Like when she sees people perform as children, and they kind of do that thing we all do when we play kids or teenagers, that they ask, have you ever really been around any teenagers or children? And when I see that from a performer, when it comes to feelings, I ask myself, like, has this person ever felt pain or had to cry or, been vulnerable in front of somebody? Like, it's,
yeah. And the thing is with emotions, like most people have, it's like, have I ever been to France? No. And like, the chances that somebody has when you suggest France as a location is more of a roll of the dice. But if you are choosing to put on an emotion or set up to experience an emotion, you might not have been in that situation, but you've experienced the emotion that comes along with it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's like you have more you just got to think about it in a less I guess when you see students that are kind of schmacting like that.
I love that term, schmacting.
Yeah. There was somebody in my like a grad assistant for an acting class I took in college that gave me a note that I was schmacting. It was, Jim Carreying my my emotional moments. And that it made perfect sense to me. I was like, oh, schmacting, that's definitely a thing. But then I think it's just a thing that he says.
Okay. Oh, hey. I'm sorry, I cut you off in the middle of a sentence. When I see a student schmacting.
Yeah, when you see students that are kind of like schmacting, two-dimensional acting, like how do you kind of like get them to stop that commenting and be more realistic or authentic about it?
Wow. Good question. It's hard to tell someone how to show. Usually there is a really great I have everybody stop and do this exercise, is one I learned from Dave Davies. And before I even start the exercise, I have to explain to everybody, we are adults and we're going to do an exercise, and no one can take this personal because it's only a game, and no one means anything they're about to say when it comes about as far as it comes to when we're talking about feelings, So let's just have that understanding. And then I have everybody get in a circle, and I tell everybody, you have to be absolutely in love with somebody. You absolutely have to hate somebody. And you have to kind of like somebody, like have a work buddy, like feelings for somebody, and then everybody else you don't have feelings for. And you have to show that with your expressions. And most of the time we do it the first time, and everybody thinks it's going to be an easy exercise. It sounds easy. Like, show someone you hate them. Just using your facial expression. It's a totally silent exercise. Just show them you hate them. That's really easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
And until you do it a couple of times, people don't realize how little they show or how much you have to show for people to realize what you're showing. And like, there's usually a reaction like, oh, I thought you hated me. Like, no, that's how I show love. And that's usually an interesting, like, yeah, you better get a mirror, buddy, and do some reps. Because
go ahead.
That's why you need, like, when you're starting, to become an actor or improviser. That's why you need a director or coach to tell you, because there's a part of yourself you can't see, emotionally and externally. There is something you can't see. So yeah, if you might be thinking you're playing an emotion at 100 when you are only showing 10.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because sometimes you do need to dial it up. If I'm a very subtle emotional experiencer, so there are definitely things that I need to dial up, and then it becomes like, where's that where's the perfect balance between like doing enough to express something, and versus when you're doing too much and it's like we don't need that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Also, another helpful hint. Uh, there I go, self-commenting again. Another helpful hint: if you have to say what emotion you currently have as a character, then you're not showing it enough. Because then you're doing extra work.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so mad right now. Like, yeah, well, you're not showing you're angry. You're just saying you're angry, and it doesn't have the same effect overall.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, so yeah, now we're in like really just talking about like emotion and physicality in the relationship
Right.
between those two things. Which we should. I feel like that's a great topic for an episode too.
Right. You want to reel it back in?
Yeah, so let's go to Nicole's got a comment here, a very long comment. I'm not even sure this is the whole comment.
Can you read it like Nicole? No.
Nicole, thanks for commenting. She says, I feel like a huge part of this is the place the individual is coming from when breaking character, like seeing a fun moment to play on and not letting it pass by, playing with that moment in a clowning sense, being true to that moment that occurred and expanding on it and having fun with it. In a scripted show, this type of breaking can easily go off the rails and take away from the written words of the script. Timing of breaking is also important. It can be very inside baseball too. And then
there's more,
which leads me to believe that there's more, but we don't have a see more button. So truly though, Nicole, if you do have more, feel free to comment.
Yes, please. And hello.
Yes, and hi, Nicole. Okay, so there's a few really great different ideas in there. Yeah, I think that it depends on where the person is coming from. Like we said, like, what is your agenda? Are you trying to get the laugh? Like, is it sort of an egocentric or a bit of a selfish move to be like, I'm in my own world and I want to comment on this because I think that it's the most special thing going on.
You see a lot of it during like on stage during the political years, like the polling seasons and stuff like that. Like if something comes up, I remember hearing, "Oh, thanks, Obama," sarcastically making fun of Republicans and right side politics. Like, yeah, a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Almost. Yeah, like really just it's kind of soapboxing. That's funny. Yeah, that is an instance where it comes up a lot is if you're in a political or hot button scene and people sort of like make side comments, literally their own beliefs on the side of the scene. But so yeah, it's like, are you kind of like overwhelmed with your agenda pretty much, or is it really like you feel in the moment and connected and you're like, I think this is a shared experience that we're all aware of in this moment, and trying to put the spotlight on that for the sake of everyone,
Right. Well, one of the first things we have to learn when we start performing in front of an audience is to wait for the laugh to stop, right? So there are moments that you have to slow down or stop the show for it to continue, or the audience will get lost. So, I mean, to me, that's kind of an indicator when it would be appropriate to, like, if we lost the house because something on stage happened that was so ridiculous that you have to comment on it, I think that is a great indicator.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I agree. And then so there's also, Nicole points out, in scripted shows, which
Right.
I've, you know, it can get things off the rails in scripted shows if you're green lighting or ad libbing too much, for sure. And I think that, to me, the flip side of that is the value. Excuse the New York sirens. I feel like I have to say that every episode.
Oh, you're in New York?
So for scripted stuff, it can go off the rails more easily, and for improv, it's a very special quality of like everything is unfolding at the same time for the players as it is for the audience. So it's a totally different context that these mistakes and errors are happening in, because we're not under the pretense that we have a plan for where we're going with this,
Right.
So it's like, we don't have a destination. Why not take a detour? There's no such thing as a detour when you don't have a destination, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like we were talking about before, like part of the entertainment of improv is like the process of creating. And just like a tight wire act, people are some audience members are there and they don't want to see you fall, but they want to know that it's dangerous. So, pointing out that there's no net, taking time in your show, if it's appropriate, if a tight walker were to slip, like mention like, ooh, that wasn't, that's not supposed to happen. We try to walk across this tightrope as well as possible, but this is part of the tight walking experience. Saying tight walking that fast. Tight walking, tight walker.
Yeah. The Bill Arnett has a book called The Complete Improviser, and in his book he points out that there is the spectacle of improv, which is a whole other realm that's happening at the same time, always happening at the same time. And it's usually much more apparent in like short form when you're trying to do like a high difficulty game that just is beyond reasonable ability for people to pull off without making mistakes or doing it seamlessly. But like there is the spectacle element that like we assuming that your audience knows what you're doing is improvised, then there's always that tightrope happening in people's minds. They see you walking the tightrope. And honestly, yeah, you're right. If it looks like it's no big deal, it doesn't have the same thrill. You might as well be walking on the sidewalk. Like, who cares? If every once in a while you lose your balance, that's exciting. Keeps that tightrope in view.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, this is a funny example, is Pete and I, the first time that we ran Interviewees, which is so we do an improvised talk show and we have character guests. And the first time we did it, we co-hosted it, and at the top we did an improvised monologue based on suggestions. Basically we turned like line games into 2-person games. And like after the first third of the show, we went backstage and we were like, we didn't say that this was improvised. because people weren't really laughing, and part of it was that we weren't necessarily crushing it. It was a brand new show that but like if we had told people that, they would have context for why our jokes aren't pristine. And that was a funny realization of how important that context can be. By the way, we are improvising. Here's the tightrope.
Right. You thought we're just walking on the ground. No.
yeah. Like, man, you're not great writers. Good.
Oh, no, I was going to say, we have the rest of Nicole's comment, and I kind of like where she's going with this. So let's continue with Nicole.
Nicole says, if it's a negative place, it can come from someone's lack of trust in their scene partner and not liking their choice and calling it out, which takes everyone on stage out of the moment and into their heads.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sucks. And it usually comes from there's a certain type of improviser who always has to keep their status to keep their security,
Yeah.
and to hide their insecurity. So yeah, blowing out someone's candle to make your candle brighter is no way to play. And like I said, it's called playing. Like, who you playing with? What are you playing tonight? Where are you playing at? And you don't want to play with the kid who doesn't want to play along, right?
Yes. And I'll tell you what, like, I've been guilty of this in the past, and probably sometimes recently too. But you can just tell the difference. I can feel the difference between making very similar choices and commenting in pretty similar ways, like on paper, like objectively similar ways.
Right.
But the difference between doing it from a place of, I think what's happening is so interesting and fascinating, and like,
Yeah.
I love that you're making weird choices or took us on this weird
No.
path, versus as a skeptic.
Yeah, and James, I played with you enough to know exactly what you're talking about, because you even get a posture and like, so what you're saying is, and it's very no, and it's playful. And to me, it's the difference between me calling you an asshole when we're at the bar and me going up to my boss and calling him an asshole.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Same word, same exact word, not going to be taken the same way. So I mean, there is. I mean, and it's all about how the person's receiving the information and what's in your heart when you're giving the information. And I think that's what Nicole says. Like, if it comes from a negative place and you're just trying to be shitty and trying to make a joke out of what someone's contributing to your scene, when this is creating by committee. So if you're not going to allow people to create with you, you're going to be on your own and enjoy your one person show. I hope it's good. Yeah. I hope you get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I 100% agree. And I think that it's a good opportunity to give some advice to people who find themselves kind of compulsively in that place of like, why can't I stop being so cynical or critical? And being like, really, doing the comments of like, that's what it is. I think my advice is to really think about times that you've done that in the past. Think about the choice that you were reacting to, and then give yourself a little thought experiment along the lines of what Bob did earlier with the crossing the legs. It's like, if I had to use this in a positive way that worked for the scene and also makes me laugh because and plays into my sensibilities, what would I do? Give yourself that challenge and be like, okay, I didn't like that choice because it seemed too cliche, or it seemed to derail things, or it contradicted whatever, and then be like, okay, how could I have shown that in a pattern or played with it for the scene? Because there is an answer. I guarantee. I think my point is that there is an answer. There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
Where you are happy about how it played out.
There are two reasons to feel absolutely comfortable on stage. One is because you feel like you're in control and you have control over everything. So as long as you have control, you should feel comfortable. The other way is the way I prefer. You're comfortable on stage because even though you're not in control, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start feeling that way, whatever someone says or does on stage, it doesn't matter. I mean, it should matter, but there is no, you're really improvising, and there's no wrong choices. You can make something grow out of nothing. That's the improviser's job. Creating something out of nothing, not manipulating the story that you're trying to create or the world you're trying to create.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the more that you can, so going back to what we were saying earlier too, is that it's about making sure that you've conditioned yourself to going that route, where you make something out of the mistakes, you keep it in the scene, you stay with the commitment and the integrity, and succeed with that route. if you have not made an effort to do that in a way that you feel is consistent and a muscle memory for you, then I think that is the route that you need to go and spend time doing that. On the other side, then you free yourself from the habit, right? I know I can do that, but I would rather
Yeah.
do this other thing. And then because you could do the scenic route, the
Right.
place that it's coming from when you make comments all of a sudden doesn't feel so shitty and judgmental. Instead, it feels like
Right.
just an honest amusement.
Because honestly, what drives me nuts is when someone offers something that's really interesting and then their scene partner comments on it and it doesn't get used. Hey, Dad, can I take the hoverboard to work? No, they haven't been invented yet. No one can fly. That's a dumb idea. Let's make this cake. Okay. I've seen cakes get made. I, as an audience member, would like to see the guy who painted himself in the corner of having to try to fly this magical skateboard that still hasn't been invented. Yes, that to me, that's a better scene.
Oh man! No, you fucking idiot! Let's make this cake.
Let's make this cake.
Yeah, I feel you. It's like do the thing that scares you. It's that follow the fear thing, right? Like if you're like, oh, I don't want to go into fantasy world, or I don't want to go into sci-fi, or I don't want to jump to the next thing. You at least have to travel those paths when they present themselves enough to know what happens and to give it a fair shot at being okay. And I think you'll surprise yourself when you're like, yes, jetpack, let's go, or hoverboard, or whatever it was.
Jetpack, either one. You can use both at the same time. Yeah, sci-fi stuff.
Yeah. So one more kind of piggybacking on this and then segueing to one more comment from Nicole. There's this idea of like calling out the game, which is like when the character sort of spells out what's happening in the scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I really don't like that.
Yeah. So let's try to think of a quick example here. Like okay, so there me and Peterson did a scene once where we were at a loud party and I was shouting chit chat at him. He was telling me about a horrible accident that he had just gone through. And the idea was that the music was so loud that I misheard him, and then would just respond with normal chit chat. And so that's the game. Is Chris is telling me about a horrible accident, I'm mishearing it as small talk. If one of us if Chris goes, it seems like you're not hearing me right, and you think that this is you think that my accident was just a bad work week. If he calls out what the game is, to me that takes away from the game that we're playing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time the audience already knows. Like they already know what game you're playing. Calling it out just deflates it.
Yep. And one thing that I will say is that it can be a helpful training wheels if something that you're working on is game of the scene and locking into something with your scene partner. It's good training wheels to just kind of like flag it and inside the scene communicate with each other to be like, this is my offer, or this is what I want to confirm that this is what's going on. But you just have to do that knowing that it's training wheels, and eventually you want to ride the bike without training wheels.
Right.
Okay, so this is another interesting example from Nicole. She says one that happens to me a lot is being called out. I'm paraphrasing / elaborating here, but if she's got like an English accent that turns into Southern or starts normal and suddenly becomes Southern, somebody might call her out by saying, "You just became Southern."
Right.
And it's a really interesting example because one, I feel for you, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh
not
yeah.
fair to always call you or anyone else out about it if when it happens unintentionally. Accents are hard, and if you're
Yeah.
I don't know, your Scottish accent becomes Australian or whatever it is.
Right. Or yeah.
Um,
Anytime you start to do Gilbert Gottfried, if it turns into what is that? You ever hear me try to do Gilbert Gottfried? It always turns into oh god, what's his name? Jerry Lewis.
yeah. I know.
100%. Like, and that is something that Pete and Doug have so much fun with.
Yeah. Or you're doing another one that happens to me is I can only do like the Gollum or Meatloaf
Oh,
voice for so long until it turns into Kermit the Frog. Because doing this into doing this, where like whatever the high pitch thing is, I like lose all of a sudden, and then I'm like, I'm Meatloaf, my precious.
yeah.
Um,
It's rough. I mean,
yeah.
and it's something you can't control. So commenting on something that someone can't control when they're trying to get the best handle on, like it's like walking up to someone who has a flat tire and while they're fixing it, like, "Hey, your tire's flat." Like, I understand. I'm trying to fix it right now. Are you going to help? Are you going to use the jack? No, you're just walking past me to be an asshole. Thank you, boss.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing as in this example is like, if you play with somebody that has a sort of a tick or unconscious habit that
Right.
yeah, you're right. You don't need to call them out all the time about it. There's also, you could start doing it too. Somebody goes Southern, slips into Southern. You also
Yeah.
Southern.
What if you're in some region where that's the dialect? That's someone from England came over to a southern state, and that's how they talk now.
Yeah.
Awesome, and it's fun. And wouldn't it be more fun to live in a world where that exists rather than a world where we pick on each other?
Right. Yeah. Because if you're picking on it, again, the place that it's coming from is noticeably different. But
Absolutely.
I guess the kind of like caveat in here is that the truth is, like if you were to just taking Nicole's example, if that happens a lot and you play in random groups of strangers, chances are the strangers that you're playing with who don't know each other and are playing with you for the first time are probably going to call it out, not knowing that it's something that happens here and there out of habit or whatever. And so that kind of goes back to our thing on like, well, that's a real honest thing that's happening in the moment. And chances are you're aware of it. I'm aware of it. The audience is aware of it. And so we might actually authentically, playfully comment on it. And then it's like, okay, well, if I don't want that to become an issue, then there's a little bit that's on the player to be like, okay, how can I curb that? And I know, because Nicole is a very friend of ours, that's something that Nicole is conscious of, is like, man, trying to avoid that slippery slope when it happens, to be like, God damn it, I know what's going to happen if I go down this path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Honestly, if I was in Nicole's shoes, I would act in character as if I didn't know what the person was talking about. And it's like, that's how I've always talked. Because the person making the comment assumes that she's doing something wrong, especially when that's not true. Because what if we haven't even said where we're at yet? You know, we haven't solidified anything. This could be a discovery rather than a mistake that you're deciding is a mistake because you're assuming something. So if we use it as a block to create something, stronger move.
Yeah,
all day.
True. Because if you do have a tick that comes up here and there, it's like it's probably a good idea to come up with like canned responses to it, right?
Right.
That'll probably bail you out and probably get a laugh whenever it happens.
Yeah. And honestly, like so going back to the Jerry Lee Lewis what's his name? Gilbert Gottfried thing, most of the time Peter Doug will announce it to the audience that's going to happen just to prepare for it. So it becomes a bit. So again, it's your friend calling you an asshole rather than you calling your boss an asshole. So so there's times where it's fun, but you know, I'm with Nicole. Like if I'm playing with somebody and I'm trying to do actual scene, because the example I'm using is short form. Like if I'm in a long form scene and they try to correct me, like try to give me a note from the actor point of view, rather than, you know, they're just maybe commenting on accident through character. I will comment on their comment, you know?
Yeah.
Just because I think that's fun to me. Like I like to antagonize an antagonist. Like that's fair game.
Yeah. I mean, like all of it has to be through the lens of playfulness, right?
Oh yeah.
I think that hopefully that is a given, that like if you have kind of comebacks loaded, that it's not like you know, venomous. It's all got to be in the spirit of play, and as long as that's the case, and to the best of your ability, you're keeping things in the realm of choice instead of habit. Meta is fair game to me.
That was fun. I think the last form of this we should talk about is something that Jill brought up during her interview, like using meta moments to take care of your audience.
Yeah,
you know, like for example, her example, she was doing her one person show, Drum Machine, and where she interviews an audience member and then uses that for the inspiration for the rest of her show. And the person she interviewed just happened to be I don't know what they would call it, like a sign language specialist or
sign language.
Interpreter, or I don't know what like the technical name is, but she does sign language, and Jill does not do sign language. So she just, when that part came up where she was supposed to play that audience member, she just took a Zach Morris quick timeout and like, hey, I know you're wondering right now if you whether or not I'm going to do sign language. I am not. And you know, we as performers should always try to punch up. I think that's just the world we live in can be so shitty sometimes. And I feel for the audience member who comes in who, you know, may not have had the best week, and all they're trying to do is see a comedy show to uplift their spirit. Like I try to be like, I would not want to add to their shit wagon. So if you could take a moment out, and she explained, like, I don't know sign language, so I'm not going to attempt it or, you know, mock it inadvertently. So the only sign language I know is thank you. So everything I'm signing is just going to be thank you. And that's how she did it. And I think that's a respectful way to use commenting, just so we're all on the same page. I'm taking care of myself. I'm taking care of, if it was a 2-person show, her scene partner, and taking care of the people in the audience, especially the woman she interviewed. You know, when you interview someone and you're going to use their lives to inspire your art, you should really take care of that person, because they're really trusting you with something that's very personal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, there that is the trust. I think again, it's a difference between stand-up or sketch, is that like the promise is that like I have a plan for what I'm going to do with this stuff. And with improv, it's a little bit more like people are trusting you,
right,
to figure it out in a way because they're bracing themselves for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're trusting you to pull it off. And so there is a lot of investment and emotional you know, leeway that people give you. And so when if you misuse that, that can be the disaster. So yeah, I think meta being a way to like check in with the audience is amazing. I love it.
Right.
Yes, and Sue, shout out to you here, Bob. Thanks for reminding me
Aw.
of the spiritual integrity part of improv.
Thanks, Sue. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And then Nicole, thank you for commenting. Nicole says thanks for commenting on my long ass comments.
No, thank
for
you.
long
That
ass
gave us
comments.
so much. She was like the unofficial guest today. I loved it.
Yeah. Much appreciated. Is there any other area of meta that we should touch on?
No, I think, like we said, maybe the overcap is if you're doing it against the bullion and just do it with a good heart and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Maybe one common meta thing that we didn't really touch on is playing from the audience, breaking the fourth wall, going into the audience. I personally love that. I think we've mentioned enough on in other episodes to make that clear that we are in favor of using the room.
I don't think you and I have ever missed a 2-man no-show set at Diff. So yeah, that's our jam.
Yeah, and playing characters who are situated in the audience.
Oh yeah,
I think it would be a little one-sided to talk about that stuff, but that is a piece of meta. I understand why some people are like, let's keep it to the stage, or get annoyed if somebody's always going out into the audience in everything that they do. It feels a little one note or the same every time. But hopefully in the conversation we've just kind of pointed to the fact that like it's a style of play, and it's definitely okay not to like it, but I don't think hopefully no one is like it doesn't belong in the world of improv, because I think it very much does.
Oh yeah, because again, there's no rules, and the things we call rules are just strong suggestions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's we'll close it out here. Thanks again. Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole and Sue. Thank you. And for anybody else who listened who didn't comment, we appreciate you. I can see there's a few people watching. We'll be back next week.
Yes. Thanks for joining. We'll catch you next time on Improv. Oh, sorry. Before we go, closing notes here. You can find us on, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. All the most complete and current content is on our YouTube channel. We also are a podcast where you can find the audio only episodes that are pretty much caught up, except for these live episodes, which are going to start being released on Tuesdays moving forward. The audio from old live stream episodes, and then our most current pre-recorded episodes will go out on Fridays to both the podcast and Facebook and YouTube. And then you can also find the complete library of lecture episodes on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram now on IGTV on the Improv FAQ profile. And then new episodes of the lecture series are going to be starting every other week, starting this Wednesday. The first episode is going to be Yes and. I have not done a yes and episode on just one of the first and foremost principles of improv, and I thought that would return to the lecture series. So that comes out Wednesday, and then every other week for as long as we can keep it up. Great, that's it. Thanks again for joining. Next time on Improv FAQ. Bye.
Bye.